Chapter 7, Cellular Respiration. Okay, in this chapter, we will be looking at three subtopics, right? So let's look at the first one. So back in chapter 5, you have learned two types of metabolic reaction, namely catabolism and anabolism. Okay, and both of these processes involves energy. So we know that energy is very important. And where does this energy comes from? It comes from the process known as cellular respiration. Okay, so next, so the main substrate in energy production, that means the main substrate in the cellular respiration is, what is that? That is glucose. Okay, I'm sure you are familiar with the term respiration. Okay, respiration requires glucose. Okay, cellular respiration is carried out to generate energy needed by all living cells. And what is the meaning of cellular respiration? It is the oxidation process of organic molecules through several stages. So it's a complex process, and in the end, the aim is to obtain energy. So the chemical energy found in glucose is released to produce energy required by cells. So in humans and animals, glucose is obtained through digestion of carbohydrates. So from the food we eat. So these carbohydrates, you still remember back in chapter 4, okay, where you learn about carbohydrates, okay, the monosaccharides and the disaccharides. Right, and the end products of carbohydrates is that you get this glucose. Glucose is a type of monosaccharide. Okay, so in green plants, where do they get glucose? They don't eat like human beings and animals, so green plants have to synthesize glucose themselves by the process called photosynthesis. So there are two types of cellular respiration. Okay, so the two types are aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration happens in the presence of oxygen, whereas anaerobic respiration occurs in the absence of oxygen. Okay, another term over here, fermentation. Okay, maybe some of you have heard of it before. This is an alternative pathway of obtaining energy besides cellular respiration. So what happened in fermentation? Still, you need glucose as the main substrate. So this glucose will be broken down, but it is broken down incompletely. Why? In the conditions of limited oxygen or without oxygen. So in this chapter, we are going to focus only on aerobic respiration and fermentation. We are not going to look at this anaerobic respiration. Okay, so this table shows the difference between fermentation and aerobic respiration. Okay, there's another table over here. Anaerobic respiration. This is the one that we are not going to look at in this chapter. Okay, but we're going to look at fermentation. Okay, so let's look at this cellular respiration. So the word cellular comes from cell. So here it is understandable that cellular respiration is a process that happens in the cells because we're talking about cellular. So it happens in a cell. What process is this? This process is to generate energy from the main substrate, which is glucose. And there are two types. Okay, in the presence or in the absence of oxygen. So if it is in the presence of oxygen, we call it aerobic respiration. Okay, in the absence, we call it anaerobic respiration, but we are not going to look at this. Okay, instead we'll be focusing on aerobic respiration and fermentation. Okay, Notice here, fermentation, mostly an extracellular process. Okay, extracellular, unlike here intracellular for aerobic respiration. So can you see the difference? They are not the same. Okay, all right.